Hello, it's Anton. Today we're going to be learning about dimensions. How many dimensions do we live in? Most people would say we live in 3 dimensions, which is true. We do live in 3 spatial dimensions, but there's also a 4th dimension, time. What would it look like if we lived in more than those 4 dimensions? Let's find out. Before we try to understand living in more dimensions, let's try to think about what it would look like living in fewer dimensions. So we'll start with 1 dimension. That's a line. There's a couple ways to think about it. 1 dimension means there's only one way you can move. You can also think about it that it only needs one number for a coordinate type system to show you exactly where something is. 2 dimensions would be a flat plane, so something like a square. Again, you can think of this as you need 2 numbers to specify on x and y axis where you are, or you can move in 2 directions. 3 dimensions, those are the spatial dimensions we're all very familiar with. A lot of the times when people think about living in more dimensions, they increase the number of space dimensions. So let's take a look at the relationship between each dimension and see what the next one up would be. If a 1-dimensional object would be a line, 2-dimensional would be a square, 3-dimensional is a cube, what would a 4th-dimensional object be? One way to think about moving through dimensions is that each dimension is a cross-section of the higher dimension. So for example, if you have a 3-dimensional box, the cross-section of that is a 2-dimensional object. The cross-section of a 2-dimensional square would be a 1-dimensional line. So what we're trying to imagine is a 4th-dimensional object where the cross-section is a cube. Well, there's actually a name for this. It's called the tesseract. I'll just show you what it looks like. Now, what many people don't do is think about higher dimensions in terms of time, because as previously discussed, we live in 4 dimensions, 3 spatial and 1 time-based. So what would it look like if instead of a higher space dimension, we went to a higher time dimension? Well, if you think about the time that we have now, we have 1 timeline. So if we use the same metaphor from our spatial dimensions, the next thing we would have would be a time square, multiple timelines. I'm a sucker for time travel, so whenever I think about multiple timelines, I'm automatically interested. So this would be something like a multiverse or parallel realities. There's nothing saying that you can only increment time or space. You could do both at the same time. But in order to make this make the most sense, I have here a learning aid. This is 5D chess. This is how we're going to be exploring multiple dimensions. Let's start here. Most of the rules are the same. Pieces can move through time and between timelines. The past cannot be changed. Moving a piece to the past causes a new timeline to be created. To complete a turn, make moves until the present shifts to your opponent. Standard pieces. Player can ignore any timelines that are not needed to advance or rewind the present. If a player has no way to move the present without leaving their kings attacked, then they're checkmated. Oh, this is good. So there's additional dimensions, so there's different pieces. There's the unicorn, which can move any distance along a triagonal, or the dragon, which is a quadragonal. So instead of a diagonal along 2 dimensions, a triagonal or quadragonal or along 3 or 4. The brawn is an alternate interpretation of the pawn. So I guess if I was a chess piece, now I know. Well, I'd be the brawn. Maybe. Let's just do standard against the CPU. Let's try to think in higher dimensions. Okay, so this is the present. So let's do a simple move here. I'm trying to think how I can move to the past. So far, this is regular. Oh my god, a knight. I can move up, so 2 in one direction and then 1 in the other. So I would actually move to this spot because that's a knight's move. An axis is time. What the shit is going on? So the present is now here. This move never happened. So this is the next timeline. There's already a bishop here because this bishop moved from this space to that space. I think I take the bishop. There's a knight there. I don't have... Oh, God. Am I... So in this timeline, I think I'm ahead in material. Wait, can I move? So I'm up a bishop here, but I could also move here? Is that right? I could take this pawn, but then I'd only be up a pawn. So that's along the time square, and this is along the different time line. Why does it say undo move? Can I not do this? Is it because in the past I would be in check? One of the hardest things about multiple dimensions is the tenses, because our languages weren't designed to have time squares that you could look at and move between. So I'm guessing I can't move here because if I moved there, then I will already have been in check in the future because of that. So I don't think I can do that. Let's try this. Let's go back to our original timeline. This is crazy. It's not correct to say that either this or this is happening. Either they're both happening at once. So look at the moves that this bishop can make. I can move diagonally along the X and Y axis. I can also move along what you might call the time Y axis, which is to say to a different timeline, or along the time X axis, which would be along the same timeline, but back in time. I guess I make more than one move now, even though it's the same move. If I move here, is that checkmate? I think that means it's checkmate because the king is vulnerable to check along the time x-axis in multiple ways. So I won. Oh my god. That is borderline impossible to tell. What the hell is going on? Let's try the regular AI. So I have to remember that there are more axes to attack and be attacked on. Leaving open a king's diagonal could be fine in the X and Y axis, but along the time X and Y axis, it could be an issue. So I want to leave this vulnerability because later I can use this bishop to attack the king multiple times in the same timeline. I can move normally, or I can have already moved here. So if I do this, I will in the future already have moved there. This is crazy. Okay, this is just a straight two-dimensional chess attack. But now, can I move back in time to threaten the queen here? I can! Yes! Now your queen is under attack in a different way, or the same way. So I already moved. Oh, shit. So to save this queen, now there are two queens in this timeline. That is busted. What do I do about that? So if a queen will be here, if I can get a knight here, I can actually fork these two queens and I'm guaranteed to take one of them. So how can I get a knight there? Because the queen will have already previously gone forward. Oh, this is a nightmare. And my king is pinned. Wait, but I can move my king. I can't move my king to the place where queens no longer exist. Or can I? There's no queen in this timeline. So can I move my king here? So in that case, my king had already left. There's a check here. I have to stop the check in whatever dimension that I can see it in. I lost. How did I lose? Oh, it's because this queen can go... This queen can go back in time to have already checkmated me on the fourth move.
お前はもう死んでいる。
Not because if it moves, but because then my king can't move there, because otherwise it would be in check from 6 turns in the future. And here, I can't take this, because this queen is guarding this bishop. Yikes. One more recommended, and then I think we'll have gotten the idea. What is timeline invasion? I have 5 pawns invading this, and white has 5 pawns invading me. Well, if I go this way, then the past will already have changed, and so then this won't have happened. That will leave this timeline under-defended. I think I can put this king in check here on this timeline. It turned red. I don't know what that means. So that means I'm in check. So I have to take this pawn. And then in this timeline, I can take the bishop. So now I'm in check in this timeline. So I can take it again, but then... Oh, okay. So I can't take that pawn because then the alternate timeline... Not alternate, they're both happening. In the time y-axis, this would be a check. So I have to do something. What if I moved my king? No, 2 kings in the same time coordinates would be really dangerous, I bet. Okay, so first I want to take that knight. And then here, I can't move in the time y-axis because then instead of this pawn taking this knight, my knight will be taken. And I can go here and oh shit, we got a third timeline now. A wider time rectangle. So now there's two kings. There's no victory to be had at this point because the present is here. And in this future, there are no kings. I don't have any pieces that can make it to this two-king timeline. Do I have to make a move in the present? I'm not sure how many moves I can make, or even that it makes sense to call these different moves, because they're the same move number in the same present, but sometimes a different one happened. En passant there and here. So that brings all the time axes into alignment. This timeline looks very bad for us. This one looks very good. I can go here. I can use... Oh, because this is diagonal. It's a diagonal move, but not along the spatial dimensions. It's a diagonal move along the time dimensions. So I can go here, and then this timeline, I could do that. Oh, I could go here, and then there. I can only affect each timeline once. So now this will save this, and he'll have to take, otherwise it's check, across that time dimension. I didn't think that was gonna happen. Can I go here? No, I can't. I can go, this move threatens checkmate, because it threatens this piece and this piece. And there's double check, and now I can go here. Yes. Okay. Successfully used the power of higher dimensions in order to checkmate. So just to recap before we finish the video. Now this is why most of us, I think, are going to be glad we only have to worry about one set of coordinates. Because the good thing about having time being only one dimension is we don't have to specify which coordinates we're referring to. We can say, oh, up 3 to the right 3. But in 5 dimensions, you have to specify up 3 time, left 3 space. If you imagine yourself as a chess piece, let's say you're the king, you only see this happening from your perspective. It's a very simple game. White only has 5 pawns. Suddenly your bishop disappears forever. And then suddenly from nowhere, seemingly, what we might call teleportation, once we figure out how to do it scientifically, another pawn appears. And then, out of nowhere, a bishop appears, and then we win with seemingly no other game or pieces in sight. But if you're on this timeline, if you are, like us, a 3-dimensional spatial and 1-dimensional time-based being, you would see suddenly a black piece appear out of nowhere to threaten the king. And then the knight was captured, which then you captured with your king, but also, depending on which part of the time square you look at, another king who was also you came back and had already taken that so that you couldn't take it. You were still in the same place. Neither one of these is the true event that happened. They both happened and are happening at all times, because when you can see in higher dimensions, there's no difference in reality between this and this. Even the notion of the present is a lie, because we can always go back. From this perspective, again, in this timeline, this part of the time square, you again showed up to save you from this pawn. But in this timeline, you decide to go back and save yourself. So in this part of the time square, you are gone. There are no more kings. There's no victory or defeat possible in this part of the time square. But you're not gone from our point of view, where you can only experience time in one dimension. If you looked at this, you might say, oh, you know, he died, he disappeared, he was never heard from again. But if you look at things from one dimension up, you're still here. Actually, you're here twice. You're in the higher dimensional space. You exist just as much as you always have. And so you get to this point where you and you work together, and you seem to be dominating, and you seem to be winning. And suddenly, here at the end of all things, you lose. It's really difficult to talk about higher dimensions. But if we were to try to visualize it, that's what it would look like. It makes me wonder if this is in fact really happening, and what the higher dimensions would look like for us if we could see that fifth dimension. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning about what higher dimensions might look like. If anybody wants to play a game of 5-dimensional chess against me, I'm more than happy to accept. If you like the video, please subscribe. I'm a brand new channel, so it helps a lot. See you next time.